Hey folks, my name is Robin and welcome back to Only the Best Fantasy Novels. Today I want to talk about Hidden Warrior, the second book in Lynn Flewelling's Tamir Triad. So this, right off the bat, it's quite clear that this is going to be a very different story from the Bone Dolls twin, which this book is very much the immediate follow-up to. So what do I mean by that? Following the events of the Bone Dolls twin, um, Prince Torben is now at court, his uncle's court, and he becomes a companion of the prince, which are basically this group of think of them as friends slash guardsmen who are meant to be basically the prince's personal guard. They train with him, they live with him, they dine with him. They're basically like his sworn brotherhood, and what follows is pretty much the equivalent of like the anti-training sequence where Torben and Kai they join the Prince's companions and they navigate this whole new world with its own political ramifications because of course Torben being who is a potential heir to the throne, and he forms relationships with the companions, with his cousin the prince, with his uncle the king, with his regent, and then there's his bond with Kai, which continues to grow. So this is very much an epic fantasy, more in the tradition of standard high fantasy. When you compare it to the Bone Dolls twin, which is very much this incredible mix of gothic horror and epic fantasy. Um, this is very much more of a, like I said, high fantasy. It's more character driven, it's more relationship driven, it's more drama. Um, it's more about the relationships, the tensions, the politics, that kind of thing. Like that's the driving force of the majority of this book. The events that happen, the tensions between the groups, the tensions between the different characters, and how they boil over, how they get resolved, these kind of things. Like that's the focus of this book. It's pretty engaging to read because Lynn Flewelling is just a really wonderful writer. She does an amazing job of of fleshing out the characters that she wants to flesh out that have a significant role to play in the story. She takes some like directions that I thoroughly enjoyed in this book. Like for example, given this is very much at its core a story of Tobin, who is ultimately going to be in conflict with his uncle and his cousin, as he is very much a rightful heir to the throne, as compared to them, like his uncle who usurped the throne, and the prince who expects to inherit the throne, as is his right. So sorry. So given all of that, like it was still great to see them form somewhat of a familial bond. Like he very much does love his cousin. His cousin does love him, and they just have that camaraderie and companionship. There is very much the power balance between them, like that always plays a factor. But at the end of the day, they're relatives and they do live like family to an extent. And of course, there's the fact that Tobin is just so very different from the other companions. Like that by itself, it's a source of conflict at times. There's the fact that Kai is essentially a jumped up a jumped up commoner who has essentially made his way to this exalted position, and of course, to make space for them, someone had to be displaced. So there is that thread that runs through it. Like I said, it's very much a drama driven, just a political kind of story. Brilliantly done. Well, very fun done, at least for the series. It does continue to ramp up the overarching story in the background because, like, as I mentioned in the first book, in my discussion on the first book, in this world, there's a divine mandate that the ruler of this land must be female, and the king, by nature, usurped that authority, and he's essentially killed off all female potential rulers so that he can maintain the crown. But as a result of losing that divine mandate, the realm is threatened by war, it's suffering from plague, it's suffering from famine, it's suffering from drought. And more than that, the populace has started to, because this is hundreds of years after that prophecy was made, the populace has started to remember that there was this prophecy and there was a reason why there was always a queen in charge. And so that starts to ramp up in the background. So aside from this microcosm of court that Tobin lives in, we see some events that pertain to the larger conflict that's brewing in the background. It's very much a middle book, but a middle book that, like many, like unlike some that are essentially there to just kind of build background and that kind of thing, this kind of had its own story to tell, because throughout this, like Tobin did need to grow quite a bit more based on where we left him at the end of the first book, and this book was very much that. Like he, in his own way, he needed to be prepared for queenship, and that's what this book did in many ways. So it does culminate in very much a huge reveal, a huge setup that very much sets up the third book. There is that. It's just a solid book. It's just a solid book. What else do I have to say about this book? I think that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all I can say about this book. Like it's a very different book from the first one. It's a great sequel. It's what a follow-up should be. It does very much set the stage for the third book, and if you've read the first one and you are interested in seeing where the story goes, how the conflict escalates, and how it eventually comes to a head, you do want to continue reading the series. Like Lynn Flewelling, she's an absolutely engaging writer. She's by no means flowery, but she's by no means workmanlike. She's brilliant at characterization. She's brilliant at crafting relationships, at understanding human emotions and the threads that bind us and separate us, and human nature in general. And you see it play out in this book in so many different ways, because there's so many different relationships between so many different characters that it's just fun. It was just an immersive read, something to sit back and just kind of enjoy as it unfolded, and just kind of watch how the story inevitably flows towards where you know it needs to flow. Like a lot of books out there, this book is very much more about the journey than the destination. And yeah, a brilliant follow-up. If you're a fan of the series, check it out. That's pretty much all I have to say about this. And yeah, if you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.